everyone! Welcome to the 401st episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have an awesome show for you today. We are going to be talking about lots of things, starting with Assa Abloy selling the Yale and August smart locks business. Why are they getting out of smart locks? What do they get out of it? What does it mean for locks in general? What does it mean for Matter? We'll tell you. Also, we're going to be talking about the legality of switching to smart locks and rental properties. And another big acquisition, Energy.
Did you just say energy?
Yes, it's NRG Energy.
Yes.
They're going to buy Vivint for $2.8 billion. So we'll talk about what's behind that deal and why we're paying attention to it. Then we're going to go into some small funding stories in the sensor space and in the over-the-air wireless electricity space. We've also got some little news bits about Samsung. We've got a robotic mixer that's smart. I'm not tossing out my KitchenAid just yet, but maybe. And we've got, of course, a new vulnerability, a small dev kit that's cheaper and gives you satellite connectivity. And our guest this week is Kathy Pearl, who is a conversation designer over at Google and the author of an O'Reilly book on the topic. So we're going to be talking about how to build good voice interactions and whether or not voice is over, based on all of the news about layoffs in the hardware division for Madam A. We're also going to hear from our sponsor, ARM. And now, let's get on with the show and hear from another one of our sponsors, Silicon Labs. Silicon Labs is a leader in secure, intelligent wireless technology for a more connected world. Their connected hardware and software platform, intuitive development tools, and robust support make them an ideal long-term partner in building advanced industrial, commercial, home, and life applications. Silicon Labs makes it easy for developers to solve complex wireless challenges throughout the product lifecycle and get to market quickly with innovative solutions that transform industries, grow economies, and improve lives. Learn more at scilabs.com. And by the way, we're opening up ad slots for the new year on the show. So if you would like to advertise on this podcast, you can reach out to Andrew at stacyoniot.com and he will ask you for money. So there we go. Okay, let's talk about deals. Assa Abloy, which owns the Yale and August smart locks brand, has sold those brands to a company called Fortune Brands. They also bought the MTech and Schaub premium door and cabinet hardware business as part of a deal that was valued at $800 million. So what does this mean? It means Assa Abloy no longer in the smart home smart lock business. And I would say to you, my gosh, why wouldn't they want to be in such an exciting spot in business? It's because of Matter. It's because smart locks are going to become a commodity when we have Matter. There is no reason, and I have long thought this, locks were one of the most vulnerable parties. I think lighting is also vulnerable, but if you can get people excited about your lighting recipes, that's a little bit more of a reason to stay. There's also more of a design function in lighting that you don't necessarily get in locks. Thermostats might actually be another interesting area for this, but if they tie it to energy, that'll give it another few years, I believe. But what happens is with Matter, anyone can make a smart door lock and there's no reason to pay a lot of money for it, right? Because you don't have to build the app eventually. You'll be able to control the lock through your controller and it just becomes another piece of hardware that just has a little bit of connectivity to talk to Matter. So Fortune Brands is going to now own Yale and August. And that's interesting because Fortune Brands also owns
a bunch of stuff. A lot of brands. They come and go at Fortune Brands. Like Yale and August are going to the Fortune Brands Home and Security division, which just spun off from Fortune Brands. This was a company that was American Brands in 1969. It started out buying the American Tobacco Company. Then it sold that off. It's owned Franklin Life Insurance, sold that off. It owned a ton of golf companies.
Yeah, and liquor.
Jim Beam, yeah.
But what they own now that's relevant here is they own a cabinet business, so they'll throw that in there that they bought. And then they also own Moen, which is the faucet business, and they actually have some smart products there. So Fortune Brands gets the smart lock division. What does Assa Abloy get? They actually did this deal because in 2021, they said that they wanted to buy Spectrum's H Hardware. It's their hardware and home improvement division. And that included brands such as Kwikset and Baldwin. And why does this matter?
Low end and high end.
Low end and high end. That's right. So now Assa Abloy is going to have a low end lock that'll work just fine with Matter. And it'll also have a really high value. Like Baldwin locks are what you get when you really want to secure your house. Like everybody who's rich and worries about security has Baldwin locks that I know of. And so
I don't know any rich people, but I used to sell doors, frames, and hardware, and Baldwin was definitely the high end.
That makes total sense. So they've got that. They can keep those being smart, but they don't have to invest in like app updates and having all this infrastructure around it. And I think this is going to be indicative of where certain segments of the smart home industry go. Worth noting is Assa Abloy did keep their multifamily business, which is a little bit more complicated, does require some software and integration work still. So that's what this means. And
from like an device owner standpoint, I don't see that this really changes anything. I don't want people to like be like, uh-oh. I don't think so.
What you would be concerned about would be like, oh, hey, if I own these locks, am I going to get updates, especially some of the older ones that aren't Matter compliant? So eventually they'll stop updating that software is my hunch. And then you're going to be stuck with old lock hardware and you're going to have to replace it, which is kind of a suck.
And some of I forget, is it the Yale brand that is selling a lock that's not Matter compliant, so to speak? Well, it is Matter compliant if you upgrade the module, the hardware module inside.
Yes, but the hardware module they haven't put that on sale yet. And we put that on our gift guide, and I don't know if this deal scuttles any of that, but that's worth thinking about. I don't think it would scuttle it, but because all the development is done, I think they're just kind of waiting for the approvals. But
right.
Yeah. And then I'll throw this out here because I don't know how many of y'all remember the Yale by Nest by Yale smart lock.
Nest by Yale, which I used to have, yes.
This was a storied lock. I mean, I bet there's a book in there, actually. There's certainly a magazine article. This lock was announced in like 2014, and it didn't come out until like 2 years later. It was such a cluster. And during the time that Yale and Nest were working on this, the Nest was undergoing so many issues within Google. And I got to think, this just dumps that whole problem on Fortune Brands. And if I were Fortune Brands, I'd just be like, forget about it.
Yes, but that was a different time. A lack of standards
But people still have the lock.
Oh, no, it was not the lock that I currently have. It was the one that I used to have. Yeah. And it was perfectly fine for me.
And it's still for sale. So you could go buy it right now. You would be part of this thing that I don't know if I would buy that particular lock right now. I would
not at this point. No, I think they're more modernized in terms of the tech stack options available. Yes.
So, okay. That's the first big deal. And tied to that, I thought it was worth mentioning. I saw in the New York Times last weekend that someone had written into the real estate column complaining that their apartment building had swapped out keys for smart locks. And they were like, hey, is this legal? And the New York Times person was like, yeah, so long as you can exit your apartment and the building in an emergency without needing to use the app, the landlord can use it as an alternative to a key. The idea being that everybody does have smartphones, so it's not like a huge hindrance.
I sort of see why the person's asking, though, because older residents may not have a smartphone.
They touch on this in the answer. They have issues with, like, if they have accessibility issues, that is another problem. Like, if you're blind and you can't control the app, then you're going to need a physical key.
Yeah. The one question that they don't really ask, and obviously is not answered, is what are your privacy rights? Because with a traditional key and a standard smart lock, or a standard lock rather, a landlord has no idea if you're coming and going. But with the smarts, they can know that information. And I don't know what the privacy laws say about that.
True. Or the hackability. I mean, now yes. I was reading through the comments because I love to see what like normal people think about this. And most normal people were like, you will pry my keys out of my cold, dead hands. And I get that. Although I no longer, we don't even know where our keys are. We don't use like physical keys in our doors. I don't even have a keyed lock on one of my doors. It's just a keypad.
Yeah. This is why we always recommend getting a lock with a keypad, because then you have the ability to still get in if your app's not working. Also, some locks have a little 2 prongs so that if the power is out on the lock, you can put a 9-volt battery in there to put in your keypad numbers.
Yeah, that is important.
Yeah, always carry a 9-volt with me.
Do you really?
Yeah, I test it with my tongue every morning too.
Okay, I see. I every time.
No, I don't carry one, but it's like some
you do
people
test it with your tongue every morning.
Well, sometimes I do that, but a lot of people hide keys somewhere outside.
Kevin hides
in these little fake rocks. I have a 9-volt battery hidden somewhere.
It won't go well in the winter, I'll tell you that.
Put a blanket on it.
Okay. I feel like I'm being had. All right. Next deal. Next deal. Good point on privacy.
Big deal.
Big deal. NRG Energy. This
good.
is really
Very
tough
good.
for me. It's based in Houston. It is an electricity provider. I think we used to buy electricity from it when I was growing up. Maybe it wasn't around then, but who knows? They have agreed to purchase, Vivint Smart Home, and they're going to pay $2.8 billion. And the idea here is NRG wants to get into the integrated home security systems, lighting, and specifically energy. Vivint has really made a big investment in security, smart home stuff, but also into solar energy. And so I would be interested. I don't know if NRG really wants to be in the smart home business, so I wonder if there'll be a spin out kind of that segment. If there isn't, I think that's a really good indicator that an energy management system is going to be the next thing in the homes to be kind of technologized. Is that a word I want to use?
Yeah, I think that's fair because today, like say you want to use cheaper electricity, so you go with an off-peak rate, right? Like for me, it would be like 3 cents per kilowatt hour, and peak rates with them would be like 19 cents. Currently, I pay, I think, like 14. I have to manually know, like, oh, it's 6 p.m. I can use the electricity now on the cheap or whatever the time is of the off-peak. Having it automated, like where you have things plugged in, like maybe an electric vehicle that only charges during the off-peak times, or battery storage goes and fills itself up at off-peak times, or other battery-powered devices in your home. It's too manual right now.
It is far too manual. And we've been we've had several guests on the show talk about this. I really think this is where it's going. I can tell you based on briefings I've had at CES, this is going to be a big story. So this deal, while on its surface, you're like, what the heck? It does make sense. And I think the thing to look in the post deal is what happens. Are they going to split this business out, or are they going to keep it and it'll just become energy and security and, whatever else will just become part of a smart home, which I personally think should happen. But, we'll see if it's actually viable.
The CEO of NRG Energy did tell the Wall Street Journal that they plan to cross-sell and bundle both the energy and home security products to customers. So at least on the surface, it doesn't sound like they're going to spin off any traditional smart home stuff. But obviously that can change.
To me, the question is how quickly this market develops. And so if they can help push it and people are buying into this kind of concept of a managed smart home security and energy service, then the time will be right. If the time is not right, I think they will end up selling it.
All right. Aside from the big deals, we've got a couple funding stories. And based on this first one, I learned about a new to me element on the periodic table. I did not know about antimony, which is element 51.
Isn't it antimony? I was familiar with it, but I always thought it was antimony.
Oh, I call it antimony. But so we still have something to learn about it. This new to me element. But anyway, it's being used by Flux Technology with silicon-based LiDAR infrared sensors. They've secured $4 million in seed funding. Apparently, their use of, whether you say antimony or antimony, it boosts performance in LiDAR systems by bringing the sensitivity to 10x over current systems and 50% more range, which is pretty amazing.
It's pronounced antimony, according to Google.
All right.
And did you know it's found in the human body? I didn't actually know that.
I did not know that.
It's a metalloid, but it's not a true metal, but it has...
A semi-metal, yes.
A semi-metal. I know. I love chemistry.
I used to listen to semi-metal rock music.
Oh, really? Was that just boy bands?
The band was called Antimony.
Oh, anyway. Okay, so this company got money and another company got money. Reach, a company that's doing wireless over-the-air power transmission, much like Assa or Energis, that company that I can never say the name of. They have raised $30 million in funding, and their goal is to develop high-power antennas that can focus energy to power stuff without, once again, cooking people. That's the big deal.
Yeah. Yes. It looks like they'll have to deal with at least in the US, the FCC exposure requirements to radiation. And they're saying, hey, the system's going to be smart enough that it can see where you are and switch off or reroute the power around you. In their demo, which I didn't see it, but reportedly, according to Reuters, they did connect a radio with no batteries to a power receiver. And they were able to turn the radio on as far as 25 feet away from the transmitter.
Yeah. And I will say to you, just like I think smart energy management in the home is going to be a big trend for the CES in next year, over-the-air wireless power is going to be another big trend. And I believe it's actually going to be real.
This time.
This time. Because the FCC this last year has done a lot of approvals for companies. We're seeing it actually built into some devices. Again, some of the devices are a little weird, and we're seeing it used in the real world in places in like retail settings, which very cool. Mm-hmm. So
I'm going to just call it now. I think eventually you'll see this type of technology integrated with smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, hardwired, because that way you've got a central point in just about every room, and all of your wireless sensors and such, your wireless devices can be recharged that way.
Well, that's an interesting idea. I like it. I feel like those industries are so slow to move. I mean, we're just now but actually, you know what? It might be okay in this situation because, again, we don't want to cook anybody. Okay.
No. Speaking of cooking.
What a segue.
$1,000 mixer. Yeah. Not on my Christmas list.
Look. The KitchenAid mixer, the professional KitchenAid mixer, and we own one because my mom bought it for my kid. That's like $500.
I know.
But it's a beast. It is a workhorse. I love it. And I expect it to last like 50 years. Anyway, GE Appliances has made a smart mixer. This is the GE Profile Smart Mixer with AutoSense. It has a built-in scale to let you measure stuff as you drop it into the mixing bowl. That's nice.
That I like. Reminds me of the drop scale.
Or, I mean, if you're baking, which you probably are if you've bought a mixer, always weights, never volumetric measurements. Anyway, the appliances will also shut off when it detects the dough is ready for the next step. This is something I've been asking for years in the smart kitchen. I wanted a spoon that measured viscosity. So like when I was making sauces or candies, I could tell that like it has achieved that point. Because a lot of cooking, a recipe is awesome. But a lot of it is just experience. Like, I don't know if y'all have ever overmixed a frosting, but I have, and it's disgusting. And then you're basically left with like sweet clumps of butter, not frosting.
It's chemistry magic to do it right, to be honest.
Yeah. So having something that measures something like pushback or torque, that's great. GE also will add support for Madam A and Google Voice Assistant, so you can set your mixing speeds without getting up. And it does cost $1,000. And you can buy it now, and the mixer should ship later this month. Here's the deal. I think one of the under-discussed reasons people invest in smart home technology is for expertise. We talk about like security, lighting and automation, fun, but expertise is a big one. And the ability of these appliances to give you expertise, especially when it comes to things like cooking. Another area that's really interesting in this front is exercise. The ability to tell you when your form is off by using sensors that are arrayed on the body. I don't think we're there yet. It's still very expensive for this sort of thing, and we're still testing out how effective it is. But that's one of the reasons like people are going to buy smart technology is because it gives them this level of expertise they couldn't have before. Is it worth $1,000? Probably not. But like I did buy the June oven and it gave me that same feeling of expertise and I love it.
If you're going to put Baldwin locks on your smart home, you can afford a $1,000 GE Profile smart mixer.
Yeah. Or maybe you buy the quick set and you put the savings towards don't buy quick set. No, don't. You can unlock that with like a screwdriver. Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about other smart home stuff. This is pretty nebulous, but I figure we should talk about it for two reasons. One, because Kevin and I are going to CES this year. And two, it's smart home. So Samsung's CES press conference apparently is going to be all about the smart home. And you know what? Great, because I still recall sitting with Kevin back in, was it 2014 or 2013? I don't know.
Somewhere around that time, and it was awful.
It was the Samsung CEO talking about interoperability and the Internet of Things, and it was...
There were so many buzzwords. You could have won buzzword bingo on every single card you had in the first 10 minutes.
Yes. We had a lot of fun making fun of it.
Yes, we did.
Very slick presentation.
Just to ourselves. Yeah, just to ourselves. Not to Samsung.
No. And
until now, I guess.
Well, I was going to say, they did do a lot towards interoperability. I mean, if you look at their acquisition of SmartThings, I mean, that's actually still very open.
They did set the stage for what they did over the next coming years. That is true. It just, I like going to CES. I don't want to hear all the high level, what's coming in the next 10 years stuff. I want to see, what are you working on now? What's coming up tomorrow? What can I do with it today? I'm an instant gratification gadget guy.
He truly is. Speaking of instant gratification, I'm really disappointed that we still have not seen Senglid's announced light bulbs that can detect your heartbeat, which they announced last year at CES and said they would come out this year, but they have not. So
we should make a list every year of all the stuff announced at CES in our space that didn't come out.
I'll put you on that. By the next
CES.
Kevin, you now have homework.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's a letdown. And sometimes too is Samsung's nebulous approach, which is what they're doing with this press release. They don't really tell us anything.
They're going to talk about Matter. Yay. They're adding SmartThings capabilities to more of their home appliance devices. They're also big in the Home Connectivity Alliance, which is an appliance-focused organization for standards for appliances. And I think GE is participating, so maybe my GE stuff will make it over to SmartThings soon, and then I can control everything that way. I don't know.
Well, we definitely had a painful experience 8 years ago. Hopefully this one is better. We will, at least one of us, if not both of us, will be there. And you can actually watch it yourself if you go to the Samsung's newsroom and YouTube channel. You can enjoy our pain, suffer with us maybe. It's at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the 4th of July. No, the 4th of January.
I was going to say.
Whoops, I'm already thinking I've got summer plans.
Kevin's done with CES. He's moved on to summer. All right, let's talk about security. Namely, there's another botnet. This is a new type of botnet. It's called ZeroBot, and it has been observed in the wild by taking advantage of security vulnerabilities in IoT devices that include anything running the Linux operating system. So a lot of these are like routers.
Yes.
And
not routers that we would typically talk about here because of the brand names.
Yeah.
Although there is a D-Link NAS in there, just for what it's worth.
I see that. And there's a Hikvision product, and that is all sorts of cameras, and they're rebranded as US cameras too. So
the FLIR thermal imaging camera.
Oh no, not the FLIR.
Yeah, I don't have one, but I know of it.
Yeah, those are pretty cool. Anyway, this is out there. This was found by FortiGuard Labs researcher Kara Lynn.
I'm going to say I have to give credit to whoever created the botnet because they're not using Telnet at all. They're focusing on all the other protacols. So
all
kudos.
Yay!
Well, TCP, UDP, HTTP.
TLS. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's going to try to take over your device, and then it's also going to try to go infect more devices. And I don't see anything about mitigation just yet.
No.
So keep an eye on that. All right. Hey, SparkFun has launched a satellite transceiver kit that is based on the Swarm satellite modem. And this is pretty cool because I have a $500 Swarm dev kit. We actually put it on our list of Christmas presents for people or holiday gifts. But had I realized that SparkFun was going to launch this, I would have put this on there because this one's only $200.
$200.
And also, I should tell y'all that if you're over there looking for this satellite modem, you're going to need a $60 data plan. That's for a year, though. So you can send it's very tiny. So this is like a tiny little message. It's like 1 kilobit per second kind of message size.
Yeah, you're not going to throw tons of data through here, for your $60 a year or $5 a month, whatever it is, because you only get 750 data packets per month. And each packet, according to the SparkFun website, can only be 192 bytes in size. However, you can stack 4 data plans to use 3,000 packets or at 576 bytes. So,
and it's still really cheap. So I will also say, while you're over at SparkFun, these were out of stock for a long time, but I know that we talked to Pete Warden of Useful Sensors, the former Google TensorFlow Lite dude. His Useful Sensors person sensor is back in stock. So for $9.95, you can buy, it's a person detector on a chip that already has the algorithm in there. So you just buy this, you plug it in, and you can start building stuff that detects people.
just know that this is a transceiver kit. It's not a standalone compute board or anything else. You'll have to add this board to something else.
Oh, that's the Swarm stuff, yes.
Yeah.
But if you're hacky that way, it could be super fun. If you're not hacky that way, then maybe this isn't for you. Okay. I think it's that section of the show where we listen to our listeners.
Yes, that's correct.
I'm like, oh, that's terrible. I was like, listen to our readers. No.
We had energy today and listen to our listeners.
Today is just a red letter day for us. It is time for the Internet of Things podcast hotline, which is sponsored by Silicon Labs. Silicon Labs' Wi-Fi portfolio is designed specifically for the IoT, where multi-protocol RF performance, ultra-low power consumption, and fast time to market are critical. You can learn more about Silicon Labs' low-power Wi-Fi hardware, software, tools, and dev kits at scilabs.com. And let me tell you, this is the beginning of the month, and we have a winner for the Twinkly Lights for November, and that winner is Cindy. Congratulations, Cindy. I am super excited. She left us a really good question about light temperatures, and we're not going to answer it now, but I'm still researching it for her because I really have hope. I think it's a good question. Instead, we're going to answer a question this week from Greg, all about matter and local control. Let's hear it.
Hi there. My name is Greg, and I've been listening to your show for quite a while and very much enjoy it. So thank you. I have a question for you about matter. I'm not jumping into matter anytime soon because I'm a HomeKit user and I just am looking forward to getting more devices, but I don't actually have a whole lot of interoperability needs anytime soon. But I am looking forward to more products coming with all the different platforms. But my question about Matter is this. If you've got a Matter device that is supposed to be only working locally, how does that work if you've got a device that is supposed to be doing everything locally, but some features are still needing to reach out to the cloud to work? How does Matter get around that? How does Matter work with that when we've got the same device that is supposed to be local, but it sounds like it might sometimes also be going out to the cloud? Just wondering if you could explain that to me a bit. Thanks, and keep up the good work.
This is a really good question because we've touted the local control features in the Matter spec, and I think some people may have misunderstood what we've said, or maybe we did not explain it well. The local control of Matter isn't going to magically make cloud services work locally. If something requires a cloud service, it's still going to use that cloud service.
Yes. I mean, if you want to keep everything local, you'll just end up limiting some of the functionality. And
right.
When we talk about things like, oh, Matter will be great if a company goes out of business and no longer supports its cloud, you won't lose functionality on your devices. You will lose some functionality, but you will not lose all functionality is kind of the thought process there. So that is how that's going to work. I don't know, anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, like if, say, you had a routine that had to go to the cloud to run, for example, if that device is now Matter certified and you lose your internet connection, you're not going to have that routine be available to you, but you may still locally be able to control the lights on and off, dimming, etc. That's kind of a scenario I think that illustrates it.
Yes. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. I feel like we should just combine all of our Matter questions and answers into like a
book. Let's make an ebook.
A Matter manifesto. Okay. If you would like us to answer your questions, you give us a call at 512-623-7424. You will be entered to win a Flick button kit. Those are fun. These are Bluetooth-based buttons that will work with your phone and will send you the hub so it actually goes over your Wi-Fi and so you can use it anywhere. And these buttons work with lots of things like IFT, Hue, Madam A, HomeKit, Nanoleaf, Slack, Sonos, lots of options, and they're going to be Matter compatible. So I like them. It'll be fun. And now that concludes this segment of the show, but please stay tuned for our guest, Kathy Pearl, who is a conversation designer at Google. We're going to be talking about what makes for good voice design and if voice is dead or not. It's not. I'll just tell you. But first, a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Arm. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. And this week's sponsor is Arm. And I have Mary Benyon here, who is Director of IoT and AI Ecosystems at Arm. Hello, Mary. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, Mary, what is Arm doing in the IoT?
Arm is focused on empowering our partner and our software developer ecosystem to thrive and excel in unlocking the opportunities of the IoT. We're focusing our efforts on 3 key areas. Firstly, Arm has the largest computational footprint on the planet. Our partners shipped over 29 billion Arm-based chips in 2021. Around 70% of these were designed for IoT and embedded applications. This computational footprint is rapidly evolving to match the AI workloads of tomorrow. Secondly, we believe innovative software development is key to the next phase of IoT. So we're focused on enabling developers through offerings like Arm Virtual Hardware. And finally, we're committed to the standardization initiatives driving the advancement of the IoT.
And let's talk about AI on the edge. What are some benefits of AI on the edge?
Well, AI on the edge is more secure. It enables devices to run efficiently without constant network connectivity, which importantly not only addresses privacy issues, but is also cost-effective and is much more energy efficient than its cloud-based cousins. We see AI on the edge impacting many sectors already today, including smart homes and cities, industrial, healthcare, and wearables. In fact, I've got my wearable on right now, looking at my heart rate, and I'm clocking it at a cool 70 BPM.
Excellent. And how does Arm work with its partners to nurture and grow the AI ecosystem?
Machine learning is an important part of most modern IoT use cases, and it's evolving rapidly. You can keep up to date with what's going on by working directly with our partners. Arm's AI and IoT partner programs educate the world on the latest trends and technologies. We've created these programs and channels to give people a place to start and to help connect our customers and partners working across the Arm ecosystem.
Sounds great. So where can I go to find out more?
To learn more about Arm's partner programs, visit arm.com/partners. Plus, if you're interested in the latest AI and IoT technology trends, register for the Arm Tech Talk series at arm.com/Tech Talks.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Kathy Pearl, who is a conversation designer at Google Assistant and the author of the O'Reilly book, Designing Voice User Interfaces. Hello, Kathy. How are you today?
Hi, good. It's great to be here.
All right. This has been a long time coming, but I'm really excited because obviously we talk to and we talk about voice a lot on this show. And so voice has probably been a big thing since the launch of Siri and maybe Madam A, as we call Amazon's digital assistant on the show in 2015. But even before that, I remember talking to IBM had some basic NLP speech to text that I would use on my phone instead of typing into it. So can you walk us through a sense of why voice is so big now?
Yeah, in my view, voice was first sort of mainstream or really accessible to the public back in the mid to late 90s when we were first building automated phone systems. You know, when you call your bank and your airline and you talk to the computer rather than a person. And obviously those are still around today. But I think that was the public's sort of first exposure to it. And to me, I think I kind of divided into the 2 eras of voice. And there was that era of the phone systems and some toys and things like that. And then when the first smart speaker hit, when Alexa came out, to me, that was the beginning of the second era for 2 reasons. The purpose of those devices is different and the technology is different. The purpose is different in that when you call a business or something, a lot of times you really would rather talk to a person, but you have to go through an automated phone system. Sometimes it's nice to talk to the automated phone system, but you have a goal, you have a thing, a problem you want to get accomplished. Smart speakers and things like that, you're not wishing, oh, I wish I could ask a person to play this song or set this time or whatever. It's serving sort of a different purpose, but letting you do it with your voice, which I think is really cool. And we were able to do that with the advent of both an improvement in speech recognition in general, but also technology like far-field microphones, which instead of having to be on your phone talking directly into your phone so you know who's talking, et cetera, now you can be anywhere in the room and the far-field microphone can pick that up, and now we can do that type of interaction.
True. I probably underplay far-field microphones and overplay NLPs, so my bad. So let's talk about, in this era of voice, I'm talking to my phone, I'm talking to a digital assistant, I'm still on the phone with chatbots. So can you talk about when you're designing for these conversations, how you think about parsing them?
It's a really important question and something we designers need to be thinking about a lot, because if I am in my own home with just myself or my family, I'm pretty comfortable talking to a smart display or a smart speaker. But if I'm out in public and I'm walking around with my phone, I may or may not be comfortable speaking to my phone. And then compare that to I'm in my car. And obviously safety is a huge priority in the car, and you don't want to distract people with a long conversation or things like that, but you want to make it easy for them to do things that they want to do, like play a song or respond to a quick text message. And so you really want to think about, is this the kind of thing that's a general purpose assistant that's sitting in someone's house, or is it's a kiosk in a store and there's a very specific task they want to do and there's other people around. And so there's a lot of different variables I think that will go into making sure you structure your design around the most important tasks and the context that person is in at that time.
And this will be, you mentioned the car, and I think this is kind of an interesting thing because I drive an older Tesla. And so I still have physical buttons, but fewer. And then I have the screen and the software kind of interface. And I would actually love to be like, turn on the defroster, because right now I have to hit one button and then look at it and hit another button in there that's not a physical button. In thinking about voice as one of many user interfaces, can you talk about why it's becoming more important as we switch more things to software?
I believe that it's more important because software is so complicated. And I know... I'm a certain age, so sometimes when I'd install a new app or new software, it takes me a little while to understand how to use it. Why put people through that when we already know how to ask for stuff? So I would really rather say, like, just, open my settings or make it do this thing, or like you say, turn on the defroster. I don't want to learn this new vehicle or new app or new gadgets language. I want to speak my language and have it translate that into its language. The cognitive load of it's even if I switch between my Mac and my PC and where how you switch between tabs, I constantly am forgetting and doing the wrong one on the wrong computer. And it's like, why put ourselves through that kind of thing when we could have a simpler way to do it?
Speaking of cognitive load, I will say that I have both a Madam A, I have Hey G. Sometimes, because of various skills, I have to open up a fresh skill in Madam A, and then I'll be talking to Geneva, which is the assistant for a personal appliance I have. I feel like even though voice is easier, it is still a challenge today, one, to figure out who I'm talking to, and B, figure out the right language to get that thing to do what I want it to do. What are the ways that you're thinking about that we could make this easier across different platforms and then across different end devices we're trying to control?
Yeah, I think you bring up two good points. One of them is, as you were talking about, knowing how to ask for what you want in order to get it done. And that in my bias as a conversation designer is a failure on our part, the builders of technology's part, because we can fix that. And the reason I say that is because there is a way to, over time, understand the way in which people are going to ask for things and make it flexible enough. Like if you think about setting an alarm or a timer, there's dozens and dozens of ways to set an 8 a.m. timer. It seems so simple, but we speak in so many different subtle ways. But we know how to do that. We build a grammar that allows people to say the same thing in lots and lots of different ways. And sometimes I find that people launch something with voice or chat and they think, oh, it's so clear, it's so easy, everyone will know what to say or type. But no, so we need to be iterating constantly and seeing what are people typing or saying so that we can update and iterate and make sure that we are hearing. And then it shouldn't matter what device you're talking to. If you want to set an alarm on this refrigerator versus in your car, you should be able to say it the same way or whatever way you want. And we could do that if we were more rigorous about it.
So I have a Roomba that I have named Terrence, and that is tied into my Google Assistant. So I would say, hey, G, ask Terrence to vacuum the master bedroom. And G would always tell me, I can't help you with that. But if I said, hey, G, tell Terrence to vacuum the master bedroom, it would do it. That feels like a really small decision on my point and really hard to come up with. And so as a conversational designer, I'd be curious, like, I get that there are limits on this. So walk me through like figuring out those interactions and what kind of considerations and trade-offs you're making there, because it's got to be tough.
It is, because as you say, it sounds so simple, right? Like, why on earth would you have to say it in a specific way? And I'm not going to get into like all the technical reasons, but I think it's back to that same point, which is it shouldn't be that way. For this technology to really have a crucial part in our lives that's useful to us, we have to break down those types of barriers. And where it gets really tricky is that computers are like really bad at common sense and ambiguity. And, something that it might be obvious to you or me, like, of course I know what you're talking about. And when you use a word that means more than one thing, or you refer to something that's ambiguous, we use all the context around how you know that person, what are you doing right now, what just happened 5 minutes ago, and that informs you as to what they meant. Whereas a computer is sitting there often and it's always in the present. And you say something that maybe is slightly ambiguous, and it just throws up its hands, like, I don't know how to deal with this. That is something that we have to learn to do a better job of, where you want to have that correct balance, of course, where it knows just enough about what's happening that it can do the right thing when you ask it, but you don't want to go too far and have it, keep track of too many things.
Where doesn't it make sense? Like, where are places it's just really bad to either expect a voice interface to succeed, or areas where it's still difficult, but we may get there?
I think I'll start with a really small example, which is just I use my smart devices to play music all the time. But I've noticed lately when I'm close to one of my devices and I want to change the volume, I will usually reach over and touch it, even though I could use my voice. Whereas, of course, if I'm sitting on the couch and I'm farther away from the device, I'm going to use my voice. And I just find that interesting. Like, why did I do that? Why did I tap it to do the volume instead of speak? I don't know exactly. I mean, I can speculate. I didn't want to interrupt the music, whatever. So I think there's simple things like that. But I first of all, I believe in a lot of flexibility. Like, sometimes you do want to talk to things and sometimes you really don't. Maybe it's private information, like medical information. You really don't want anyone to hear you, or things like that. But it's also the form factor. And it's like, are you lying in bed and you want to do something, but you don't want to get out of bed and go pick up your phone and tap it? But also there are some things, sometimes I do see people trying to turn things into conversations that honestly a web form would just be really great. And you don't have to over design and make everything a conversation, when sometimes, the old school stuff works just fine. So a lot of it, I really think it gets down to like, what problem are you trying to solve? What do people actually want to accomplish? And do some user research and testing. Like, how do they want to get it done? And there may be more than one way.
Like, how do you think about these things, and how do you plan the flow when you're designing an interaction?
I actually do often go back to like, is there already a human conversational experience about this? Give me a musical recommendation or something like that. You might be like, yeah, I would ask my friend that same question. We would have a conversation about it. So perhaps it is a good candidate for a conversational interface. Perhaps not, because again, maybe it's too complicated for our technology. That's certainly possible. I'll also throw out there that there are situations in which people may not have another option other than, for example, using their voice. And that could be a reason, like they have a disability and it prevents them from perhaps, maybe they're blind, they can't see their phone, or, maybe they have some motor impairments and they can't swipe or tap their phone. And so even if something like ordering a pizza takes a little bit of a longer conversation than doing it by going tap, tap, tap on your phone, it's still a necessary interface for some people.
Let's talk about what we can realistically expect today and where we might see this going. So today I feel like it's pretty much like, I'm like, do this one thing. And maybe there's a little bit like, sometimes I'll get a ask back, like, do you want me to also do this? And then I can say yes or no. But it's not like that back, like ordering a pizza where, hey, order a pizza. Where would you like me to order it from? It's this place. what would you like? So like, I guess in terms of like how we think about these conversations, how far can we take that today and where will we go tomorrow?
I think so much of it depends on something which we've been talking about, which is context. For example, on Google Assistant, there's a feature called Animal Talk where you can just, hear about an animal of the day or get more information. And sometimes, kids will interact with that and they'll have super long conversations. But you would never want to force that kind of conversation on someone, right? So you're looking for opportunities where someone's like actually interested. Maybe someone's bored. Like one time I was stuck at an airport and I ended up talking to a chatbot for like 20 minutes. I know, sad. But it depends on what is going on. And I think there is a lot of potential for longer interactions and longer conversations, very dependent on what person wants. For example, I used to work at a company that did healthcare, and we had medical assessments that sometimes were kind of long. But we found that if people felt they were moving forward and progressing in the questions, that they were content to answer quite a few questions. But as soon as it felt like a question was repetitive or not useful, then it was like, whoa, this is too long. What am I doing? So much of it is around like careful design and like, what is the goal of this conversation? And does it make sense to have it be a little more longer and interactive? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I don't want to have a 5-minute conversation about turning on my light, but maybe I want to have a longer conversation about a topic that I'm interested in and I want to learn more about if I have time. And so you really have to know like, what is the right time? What is the right context? What are the right tasks that you might want to invest in those longer interactions?
I'd like to go into 2 ideas. One is accessibility, but then also the role of helping assuage loneliness or voice assistants as a companion and thinking about how to design those conversations. What are the things as a product company, as a designer that you've got to think about when designing a voice interaction designed for company in conversation?
Yeah, maybe we can tackle the accessibility one first. I feel like these voice assistants have so much potential, and there are already things that they're doing, which I think are terrific. Like, there's applications that help people who have speech that is maybe difficult to understand. Maybe they've had a stroke or they have ALS, and it's hard for people and computers to understand them. And yet they could benefit so much from being able to do things with their voice. And there's technology being built, like at Google, we have something called Project Euphonia, which is basically helping people create personalized speech recognition models on their phone so they can be understood and actually do things, which I think is just fantastic. It can potentially allow for a lot more independence. I remember once reading a story about a blind man who said that he loves that voice allows him to change the TV channel without having to ask someone in his family. They would change the TV channel. It's not like they won't do it. But how much better is it to be able to do it yourself? And I think we sometimes discount that. Like we think about like basic needs, like is this person being fed? Are they being taken care of? But then what if I just want to surf channels and do that for 20 minutes and waste time? Like you might think, well, that's not an important task. But those are those little tasks that make us, feel like people. And if we don't get to do those things, then we're out of, we're maybe feel separated. So I think there's so much potential there for people who are blind, people who are deaf, people who have motor impairments, cognitive impairments, all those things voice technology can really help with.
We have actually a very prolific and knowledgeable commenter on the show and on the web who is quadriplegic and talks about exactly this, who was so excited about voice because it enables him to do so many more things kind of along these lines, but a little different because we all might find ourselves alone at airports talking to chatbots. How do we think about designing conversational interfaces for these longer, maybe companionship?
I think this is such an interesting topic, and I feel like it has very strong opinions on both sides. Like you think about, I remember reading Sherry Turkle talks about how horrifying it is that she witnessed an older woman telling an extremely sad story to this robot that, the robot has no emotions, right? And she's just like, this is terrible. Like, this is like a bad thing. And then on the other hand, I have worked on some technology in which people who have felt lonely have been like cheered up by talking every day to this avatar that we had. So I'm really torn because on the one hand, in my ideal world, every lonely person would have another person to talk to. Like that's the best solution. Unfortunately, we don't live in that world. And there are a lot of lonely people out there who are isolated and they don't have someone to talk to all the time. So maybe it would be nice to have a companion that's a digital companion that doesn't replace people, but maybe it's an additive. And you can talk to it. You can ask questions. I remember one time we came back from vacation and I walked in and I said, "Hey, G, I'm home." And it said, "Welcome back." And I actually felt kind of good hearing that. And so to me, I think, why not? Why not create additional abilities and ways to help people feel a little more connected? Now, again, I don't want to go too far. I don't want us to all end up, like that Isaac Asimov story where we're even afraid to be in the same building as another human and everything is digital. Like, that's too far, obviously. But could we find ethical, good ways to add a little bit of companionship and conversation to someone's life?
Right now, I've noticed that my digital assistants are really trying hard to either reach out to me after I've asked a question, like, by the way, I can also do this. Or sometimes it's a little bit more intrusive where it's, by the way, do you want me to add this to your shopping cart or something? And I'd like to figure out how to best design for having things talk back, because I notice that I get really upset when this thing talks back to me.
Yeah, it's this fine line. And I find that sometimes it's gone overboard with by the way, I can, it's like, I know, don't tell me that. And it's so interesting. I love to use this example, which happened a while ago, but I was talking to my assistant and I asked it how old the musician Adam Ant was. And it's like, Adam Ant is 65. And then it said, by the way, he's going to be in San Francisco in concert on Friday. And I was like, whoa, that to me is like the exact right time for it to provide this extra information. Because maybe I didn't know that. Maybe I wanted that. But that's the whole thing. And this is so hard. It's so hard to know, when does somebody actually want to hear this? Because a lot of times they don't. But there are some times when you get it right and people are like, whoa, that was so useful. But it's tough. It is tough as a designer to know those moments and understand those moments. And as we know, discoverability is still one of the most difficult problems with these assistants, which is, how do you know what all the things that they can do are? A lot of people use their voice assistants for the same things every day, but over and over and over again, and don't even know that there's a whole bunch of other stuff they can do. How do we tell people about these other things?
I should finish up because there's a lot in the news right now about voice being a failure because Amazon is doing some things with Madam A and Google's a little sad about hardware and voice, and everyone's like, voice is over. So before we leave, can you tell me, is voice over?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say no because, I want to keep my job. But here's my take. My take is that I think that voice is here to stay. We've passed the point where voice is an experimental technology. A lot of people, millions of people have some sort of voice assistant in their daily lives and find it useful. I think where we're at is more of a reckoning where it's like, we tried so many things like, oh, does it work with this? Does it work with this? What about this device? What about this? What about this? And that's what you do. It's a new technology and you're finding out what's the fit. And I think now we're like, you know what? We've learned a lot of stuff. We really maybe need to refocus and think, what are the best investments? Where are the people really finding the most use? What's the business model exactly? And now we're in a more of a refinement phase where we really have to figure out, where's the best in the right place. But I absolutely think voice is here to stay. We'll see it morph into more things as time goes by. And I, for one, welcome that.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show this week, Kathy.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that concludes this week's episode of the Internet of Things podcast. Please join us next Thursday and don't forget to subscribe. And if you can't get enough IoT news, I would love for you to sign up at www.stacyoniot.com for our weekly IoT newsletter, where we explain all kinds of things that we don't even get to on the show. Once again, thank you for listening and please subscribe.